Next time I see you, I'm going to shoot you in your head. That can come from anybody. It could be anytime, any place. Someone could just walk up to me and say, it's your time, I'm going to shoot you in your head. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I was born the day after Pearl Harbor was bombed. Brooklyn, New York, meaning across the street from the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So airplanes were flying overhead. Sailors and military people lived in the project that my parents lived in. So everybody was formal and saluting and marching, hip, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it was very interesting to a little boy wondering what the heck is going on around here. And Brooklyn became tired from my parents. Gangs, the chaplains, the sportsmen, and other gangs formed, and my sister got hit in the eye by a brick, and that was it. My parents said, we're moving out of here, so they moved to where my mother grew up, New Rochelle, New York. I had always had an adventurous spirit. So in New Rochelle, New York, I was just an adventurous guy on a bicycle, riding here and there. I was a paper boy. I was the paper boy for Bob Smith of Howdy Doody fame and other notables. And so my life was very interesting. I was motivated by things that were going on in Greenwich Village. I started writing things in Greenwich Village. Tom Dent, I don't know if that name sounds familiar to you, but he was a writer, editor. And Tom Dent, he was like a mentor to young writers. And I joined a group of young writers, and he said, oh, you can write. And I said, oh, thank you. And so I wrote poetry and I wrote short stories, and he said, you need to continue this wherever you go, write, write. Become an activist, write. So when I went to Howard, I got a copy of the school newspaper, The Hilltop. And I read it and I said, this is not an activist newspaper. There's nothing going on in here. Maybe I can become an activist through this newspaper. Let me write some articles. So one of the first articles that I wrote, the way people dressed at Howard University, suits and ties. Nobody was wearing dungarees. I was wearing dungarees. I said, I'm going to write an article about dungarees. Why is no one wearing dungarees? So I posed that question, and that question became the reason for the president of Howard University to call me into his office and ask me, was I a communist? I was wearing dungarees. He said, why are you wearing dungarees? I said, I'm from New York, and in New York we all wear dungarees, and I don't have a suit. I don't have the dress that people have here. Maybe I have something in New York more formal, but I didn't bring it. I wear very casual clothes. And he says, well, I want you to go to New York and bring back some more formal clothes, and I want you to dress like they do here at Howard University. And I said, sir, I don't know if I can do that. He says, what do you mean you don't know if you can do that? Well, let's say that I have a different kind of spirit, And I don't know if I went to court that you could win a case about the way I dress. He looked at me, turned his head like that. I'm going to be watching you, young man. I'm going to be watching you. Get out of here. I fomented a demonstration, the dungaree demonstration. Next thing I knew, it seemed like everybody on campus was wearing dungarees. A real act of defiance. Somebody approached me about giving a speech at the Washington Monument with Norman Thomas. Well, I knew who he was. He didn't know who I was, because I didn't know who I was. I was asked to write a speech. Tom Dent said I could write. I wrote a speech. And I said, what should I write about? I should write about how there's no black bus drivers in Washington, D.C. I should write about how when I got to Howard University, I couldn't find a cab that would pick me up because I was black, and I had to wait 2 hours before somebody would pick me up, and it was a black cab driver on the periphery of Union Station who saw what was going on, and he walked over and approached me, and he said, come with me. I was waiting to see if somebody would pick you up, but I kind of knew someone wouldn't pick you up. But I'm picking you up. Where are you going? I said, Howard University. Come on, I'll take you to Howard University. So I wrote about, I wrote about that, and I spoke about that, and I couldn't believe how people reacted to it. It seems like every word that I spoke, people say, hey. I said, wow. I'm supposing that what I spoke about caused some envy and jealousy amongst my peers at Howard University. So when the Freedom Rides were formulated, there were secret meetings. Why were there secret meetings? Because the FBI was active on campus. They were active after my speech. They were very active because I would have handouts that I would put in the cafeteria, and someone said to me, see those guys with those brogues and those very crisp suits? They're FBI, and they're picking up the leaflets that you just put in the cafeteria. And I said, wow, really? I guess I'll have to find someplace else to put them. So when the Freedom Rides were formulated and people were getting ready to go to Mississippi, I wasn't informed. But my family knew James Farmer. James Farmer knew me. And I got this registered letter, return receipt requested, opened it up. There was a short note. Go to New Orleans. Things have been arranged for you. You're going to Mississippi. You are a Freedom Rider. When I got to New Orleans, there were certain individuals, there was shock and dismay on their faces when they saw me there. As a matter of fact, they said, what are you doing here? You're just a kid. And I said, no, I'm a Freedom Rider. So I became a Freedom Rider. I was taken to a safe house for my first night in Mississippi. The person that took me in was so kind and so nice, and the house was so neat and so trim. And they said, you have nothing to worry about here. But let me tell you about Mississippi. It's a nasty place. It's a dirty place. When I say nasty and dirty, people's hearts, their souls are so full of hate. You know, I'm doing kind of well, you know, you could tell that I'm a middle-class person. I own property, I'm doing this and doing that. I'm involved in politics, but I help people. And it's a pleasure for me to take you in and make sure that you're safe tonight. When you leave tomorrow, shotguns, anything can happen. But as long as you're in my house, nothing is going to happen to you. In New Orleans, I was taken to a house, and Stokely Carmichael and other freedom riders were there, and we all slept together. And that morning, we took a bus to Mississippi. But once we got to Mississippi, we split up, and each of us went our separate ways to safe houses. I was taken in a car. I sat up front. The driver didn't really say anything. Took me downtown. And they said, "Do you know what you're going to do?" And I said, "I'm not quite sure." "Whatever you do, just be careful." I said, "What do you mean?" "You are going to get on a bus. You're going to get on the front of the bus. You're not going to get in the back. Black people cannot get in the front of the bus in Mississippi and other places in the South. It's prohibited. You're going to be arrested. I want you to be very careful. I could tell that you're a very nice young man." "Okay." I said, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I've heard about the buses. I know people that were on a bus that was burned already." I said, "Yes." It was Alabama. John Lewis was hit in the head with a brick. I said, "I understand." So, got out the car. I saw a bus. And I said, "I'm going to go get on that bus." Walked to the bus. People were looking at me. There weren't a whole lot of people around. But it seems that the closer that I got to the bus, people came out of nowhere. The biggest policeman I ever saw in my life came out of nowhere. They were watching every step that I took. I got on the bus. I don't even remember asking how much the fare was. I went immediately to the front and sat in the front seat. "Nigger, you can't sit up in the front seat. Get in the back." At that point, I said, "How much is the fare?" I forget how much. It said 25 cents, 30 cents, something like that. I said, "I want to sit up front. I'm not from Mississippi. Where I'm from, we sit wherever we want to sit. I'm an American boy." Next thing I know, these giant policemen came and put their hands on me and escorted me to the back of the bus, opened the back door of the bus. When they opened the back door of the bus, there were all these cameras, TV cameras. I said to myself, where in the heck did these cameras come from? Looked like news cameras. I said, "Boy, you in trouble." I said, "We might kill you, you know." I didn't say a word. I thought about the president of Howard University. That's what came to my mind. I said to myself, is this about my dungarees? But I wasn't wearing dungarees. I was wearing some nice clothes, nice slacks and a nice jacket. I looked pretty good. But I thought about him. I said, did he set this up? It turned out that my parents were watching the news for this particular incident. My father fainted. I heard that my mother screamed loud enough for three miles of people to hear her scream. She screamed so loud. "Ah, my son, Ah, it's my son. So I got arrested and I went to Hinds County Jail. Then they moved me to another jail, Jackson City Jail. I heard that the reason they moved me is because they didn't have any sandwiches at one of the jail, and they wanted to make sure that there was lunch. So Hinds County Jail to Jackson City Jail, and then the next stop was Parchment Penitentiary. Stokely and I were buddies until he caught me smoking pot with his girlfriend. So that ended my relationship with Stokely. But he was in the cell next to me in Parchment Penitentiary. He was in the cell to the left, and John Lewis was in the cell to the right. And we shared stories. John Lewis told me about the beating he got, because he was still bandaged from the beating that he got. He spoke very slowly, and it was very sad. He made me cry. The cell that I was in, the young man I shared the cell with, told me stories about how he would walk down the road after picking tobacco, picking cotton, and how these white guys would come by in their trucks and throw soda bottles at the black boys on their way home, and the soda bottles would hit them and almost kill them. He said one day, one of them, because girls too, girls would work in the fields too. One of them had a hoop. The hoop was tied to a chain, and the hoop had been dipped in acid. He slowed up, threw the hoop around his sister's neck, and dragged her down the road. And I said, no. He said, yes. And the acid burnt his sister to pieces. Oh, I cried. I think I cried that whole night. I couldn't believe the horror of what he was describing to me, the stuff that was going on, and how the bodies that were found in swamps, how his uncle's body, his uncle, he said, was the kindest man you ever think of, and he didn't come home, and they found his body in the swamp. And I said, why? Just because he was kind. Certain incidents occurred in the penitentiary, and I realized that who is the who, what is the what, and why is the why, because the jailers were the worst people that I ever encountered in my life. They were not human. The things that they did to us were incredibly inhumane. They had the prisoners collect bell jars full of biting insects. They took our clothes from us so that we were virtually naked. They turned the air conditioner off, closed the windows, broke the jars, and the bugs almost bit us to death. Then they gave us medicine to give us diarrhea. No toilet paper. So we had diarrhea. We had no way to clean ourselves. I heard yelling and screaming. One of the white prisoners was shackled, but he was shackled not in the normal way. He had wrist breakers on. Wrist breakers are handcuffs that have screws that go into your wrist, and there's long chains so that the chains are stretched from here to that wall over there. And it's like they drag you by the chains. But if they flip the chains, the strain on your wrist is such that it makes you flip like a fish because of the pain and stress on your wrist. That's why they call them wrist breakers. He would scream and scream and scream. I'm still haunted by the screams that came from him. I never found out who he was. I still search my head. How can I find out who it was? I've asked people. They haven't a clue as to who it was. I believe that someone bailed us out. I had to take a train from Jackson, Mississippi to Nashville, Tennessee, so I could catch my plane to New York. The particular car that I was on, I was by myself. It was a window seat, and I remember sitting in my window seat, put my head on the window, and I heard the clackety-clack, clackety-clack of the trains on the track, and it put me to sleep. It was so hypnotic. I said to myself, I'm going home, going home, going home, going home. I woke up and I realized without looking around that somebody was sitting next to me. Then I looked. It was a white woman. And she had her head on my shoulder. And I said, what the hell? And then I heard yelling and screaming. It was coming from the car behind. Kill them, kill them, kill them, kill them, kill them, kill them. Open the damn door and kill them. There were so many people packed trying to get through from the car behind us that they couldn't open the door because they were jammed. And the reason they wanted to kill us is because she was a white woman with her head on my shoulder. She woke up and she saw what was going on. She was terrified. She felt death the same way I felt death. But heaven sent something our way. The train slowed down and came to a rest stop. We didn't say a word to each other. We got up. She ran. I walked real fast. She went her way. I went my way. I didn't see her again for 50 years. I ran into her 50 years later at the Oprah show. It was the morning of the Oprah show, and there was a breakfast at a hotel. And this lady kept staring at me. And I said to myself, why is she staring at me? Her staring became tears, uncontrollable tears. And she got up and she started walking towards me. I said, what the hell? And she said, are you Abdul? I said, yes. She said, I was the girl sitting next to you on the train. I started crying, just as I'm getting ready to start crying now. And she said, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I don't know what made me want to sit next to you on the train, but I felt that I was safe with you for some reason. Death came to me. Death came to me and was with me for 50 years. I'm so glad to see you now. Death is gone. I said to her, death is gone from me too, because death was with me for 50 years. I can't think of her name now. It's written down in my book at home. I went home to New Rochelle, New York. I kind of put getting killed behind me, but what occurred on my way home stayed with me for 50 years. Every day for 50 years, it stayed with me because death had come to visit me. Becoming a freedom rider, me, myself, and I was liberated. It made me kinder. It didn't make me hateful. It didn't make me mean. It made me more loving, more caring, more sharing. I just loved the world. I didn't care who was who, what was what, why was why. I would see people calling me names, and I'd say to myself, I don't care. I love that person. If that person was in a burning car, I would help pull them out. I don't feel any rancor or anger or hate towards that person. And I'm pretty sure if I pulled them out, that person would say, why was I such a fool? Why did I treat that person that way? I love that man. And there were incidents in which people did some bad things to me and came back to me later on and did apologize. And I said to myself, I told you so.